If you're over 60 and waking up once, twice, sometimes even 3 times a night just to pee, this might be the most important message you'll hear today. Because what if I told you that the real reason you keep getting up isn't your bladder, isn't your age, and isn't your prostate getting bigger? It's a private habit, one you've been doing for decades, and it's quietly reshaping your sleep, your energy, and your body without you even knowing. I'm Dr. James, a board-certified urologist with over 30 years of experience treating men in their 60s, 70s, and beyond. And I've helped thousands of men just like you take back their nights and their dignity by uncovering one hidden truth about their most private routines. You see, most men are never told this. There is one common masturbation habit that silently inflames the prostate, confuses the bladder, and disrupts the very nerve signals that allow you to sleep soundly through the night. It's not about how often you do it, it's about how you do it, and the position and pressure you're placing on the very system that controls your flow. But here's the good news. When you fix this one habit, many men sleep through the night again. No more 2 a.m. sprints to the bathroom. No more restless tossing in the dark. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly what's happening, what to change, and how to feel strong, rested, and in control starting tonight. Before we go deeper, if this topic already speaks to you, take a moment to subscribe and turn on notifications. Every week, I share practical, no-nonsense health advice designed specifically for men over 60, especially the things most doctors don't talk about. And if this video resonates with you, type 1 in the comments. If it doesn't, type 0 so I can better serve you next time. So let's begin where it all starts. Deep inside your body with a connection most men never realize exists. Your bladder, your prostate, and your pelvic nerves form a delicate system that controls not just how you urinate, but when and why. And when one part of that system is irritated even slightly, everything gets thrown off balance. The truth is, the way you've been stimulating yourself may be placing just enough pressure on your prostate to trigger a nightly chain reaction. And it happens silently, slowly, until suddenly you find yourself waking up in the dark, wondering what went wrong. 1. The prostate-pelvic bladder connection. I still remember a patient named Harold. He was 74, proud father of 3, a retired mechanic with hands rough from a lifetime of work. He came into my office with a simple complaint. "Doc, I'm just tired. I'm up 3 times a night to pee and I can't remember the last time I slept straight through." He'd already tried cutting back on fluids, using the bathroom before bed, even prescription medications. But nothing changed. He was exhausted and confused. I asked him something most men never hear from their doctors. "Tell me about your private routines, the ones you never bring up." He hesitated. Then he told me he often masturbated sitting down, usually late at night, in a hunched-over position. He'd done it that way for decades. And that's when everything clicked. You see, your prostate sits just below the bladder and wraps gently around the urethra. It's small, about the size of a walnut, but it plays a massive role in how your body controls urine flow. As you age, your prostate becomes more sensitive. Not necessarily diseased, just more reactive to pressure, position, and inflammation. Now imagine sitting for long periods, especially on the toilet. Your pelvis is curled, your abdomen is tight, and your pelvic floor, the muscle group that supports both your bladder and prostate, is compressed. When you stimulate yourself in that position, especially with tension or force, you're unknowingly squeezing the life out of that whole system. And the body responds. Even small amounts of pressure repeated over time can cause microinflammation of the prostate. That inflammation, in turn, irritates the bladder and confuses your internal signals. You might not even have much urine inside, but the nerves around your bladder scream to your brain, "Get up! Go now!" And so at 2 a.m., Harold and men like him wake up for a bathroom trip they didn't need in the first place. This isn't a failure of the body. It's a misunderstanding of how your body now works. When you're young, you can get away with anything. But after 60, your body asks for something different. Awareness, patience, and better alignment. And the surprising part, it's not just what's happening inside you, it's also where you do it. Because the next habit is one nearly every man thinks is harmless, but it's actually one of the most damaging of all. 2. The one habit that's keeping you awake. There's something about the bathroom that feels safe. The door locks. It's quiet. It's private. For many men, especially as they get older, it becomes more than just a place to relieve themselves. It becomes the one space in the house where no one interrupts, where no one asks questions. Over the years, I've heard it again and again from my patients, good men in their 60s, 70s, even 80s, telling me, sometimes with embarrassment, that they often masturbate while sitting on the toilet. It started out of convenience. It became routine. But here's what most of them never knew. That position, the one that feels safe, is quietly damaging them. Not in some dramatic, painful way, but slowly, subtly, and steadily over time. When you sit hunched forward, thighs pressing up, abdomen tight, you're unknowingly cutting off circulation to the very area you're trying to stimulate. Your pelvic floor, the muscle group that supports your bladder and prostate, is forced into a compressed, stressed state. Blood flow is restricted. Nerves are pinched. And your prostate, the gateway to both your pleasure and your urination, gets squeezed repeatedly without you even realizing it. This habit creates a ripple effect. The body, over time, becomes inflamed in silence. That inflammation leads to swelling. Swelling irritates the nerves around the bladder, and that irritation sends false alarms to your brain. Alarms that wake you up at night. Alarms that make you feel like you've got to go, even when your bladder isn't full. I've seen it again and again. Men who think they have an overactive bladder when really it's an overstressed pelvic region crying out for relief. I remember one patient, Marvin, who told me after we changed just this one habit, standing instead of sitting, relaxing instead of rushing, he went from waking up 3 times a night to once and eventually not at all. And he didn't need a single pill to get there. What surprised him most wasn't how quickly things improved. It was how such a small, unconscious habit could cause such a big problem. And believe me, he's not alone. Because even if you're standing, even if you've stopped sitting altogether, there's still one thing most men do that completely throws off their system every time they reach for release, and it has everything to do with how fast they try to finish. 3. How masturbation mistakes confuse your bladder. I once asked a patient, when you wake up at night, how much do you actually urinate? He paused and said, honestly, doc, sometimes it's barely a trickle. But the urge feels urgent, like I'm about to burst. That right there is the key, because it's not just about how full your bladder is, it's about how confused your bladder has become. You see, your body's urination system doesn't work by volume alone. It works by signals. Your bladder is constantly sending messages to your brain through a delicate web of nerves. But when those nerves are irritated, whether from inflammation, pelvic tension, or long-term strain, they start to misfire. They send false alarms. And one of the biggest causes of that irritation, the way you've been touching yourself, especially if you've been doing it with force, tension, or urgency. When you grip too tightly or rush through the process, you're not just speeding things up, you're teaching your nervous system to operate in panic mode. The pelvic floor tightens. The muscles around the prostate contract. Blood flow becomes erratic, and those sensitive nerves begin to treat every little sensation like it's an emergency. Now multiply that pattern over months or years. Your body starts living in a loop, one where even the smallest pressure in the bladder can set off a 2 a.m. wake-up call. You stumble to the bathroom, barely produce a stream, and wonder if this is just what getting old feels like. But here's what I want you to hear. It doesn't have to be. I've had patients completely reverse this cycle, not with medication, but with awareness. They slowed down, they softened their grip, they stopped forcing and started listening. And over time, their nerves calmed, the urgency faded, and sleep returned. This isn't about what's wrong with your bladder, it's about how it's been overstimulated and misunderstood for too long. And the solution begins not just with doing less, but with doing it differently. Because in the next few minutes, we're going to explore the shift that makes all the difference. A simple, powerful approach to touch that may seem counterintuitive at first, but can actually rewire your system for healing, strength, and deeper satisfaction. 4. Gentle is strong, rewiring your routine. Over the years, I've had more conversations than I can count with men who sit across from me, arms folded, eyes a little unsure, and say something like, "Doc, I just want to get it over with. I don't need all the fluff, I just need relief." And I get it. Life teaches us to be quick, efficient, even discreet. For decades, many of you were working hard, raising families, dealing with stress, and didn't have the luxury of slow or gentle. You got in, got out, moved on. But what no one tells you is that after 60, your body doesn't need speed, it needs softness. When you rush through self-pleasure, when you treat it like another chore to check off the list, your nervous system doesn't relax, it braces. Your muscles don't soften, they tighten. And instead of receiving the hormonal benefits of connection, things like oxytocin, dopamine, or serotonin, you get a surge of tension followed by a crash. You might climax, but it leaves you feeling drained, not satisfied. But when you slow down, everything changes. I've watched men in their 70s discover new layers of sensation simply by giving themselves permission to go slower. They learn to touch with awareness, to breathe, to pause between movements, to shift from pressure to presence. And when they do, something remarkable happens. Their nervous system begins to feel safe again. The pelvic muscles stop clenching. Blood flows freely. The body starts to heal from years of force and tension. One man, 66 years old, told me he cried the first time he slowed down. Not out of sadness, but because for the first time in decades, he felt something real. Something deep. He said, "I didn't realize how disconnected I'd become from my own body. Slowing down made me feel alive again." You see, pleasure isn't meant to be rushed. Not now. Not at this age. It's meant to be received. And yet, even if you do everything gently and mindfully, there's still one crucial question that lingers. How often is too often or too little? Because when it comes to restoring your body's rhythm, the frequency of touch matters more than most men realize. Let's talk about that next. 5. What you can expect in 7 days. One of the most common questions I hear after walking a man through these changes is, "Doc, will it actually make a difference?" And my answer is always the same. Yes. If you give your body the respect it's been asking for, it will respond. Not overnight, not all at once, but often faster than you'd imagine. I've seen it happen in as little as 7 days. There was a man named Ed. He was 71, a retired school principal, proud grandfather of 5. For years, he'd accepted that getting up at night to pee was just part of aging. He was waking up 2 or 3 times every night, frustrated, exhausted, and thinking maybe he needed a stronger medication. But when we talked and I explained how the way he touched himself, rushed, seated, tense, might be quietly irritating his prostate, he looked surprised, skeptical even. Still, he agreed to make a few small changes. Stand instead of sit, slow down instead of rush, and breathe instead of brace. 7 days later, he called me. His voice was lighter. "I slept through the night for the first time in years," he said. "I actually felt rested this morning. Doc, Mom, I had no idea it could work that fast." And Ed isn't alone. When men begin treating their bodies with patience instead of pressure, with softness instead of strain, their systems begin to rebalance. They sleep more deeply. They feel less urgency. They regain that quiet sense of control most of us don't even realize we've lost until it returns. In just 1 week, many men report waking only once per night, or not at all. Their urine flow improves, their energy rebounds, and perhaps most importantly, they start to feel hope again. Not because they've reversed the clock, but because they finally learned how to work with their body instead of against it. But what I want you to hear most is this. The results aren't just physical, they're emotional, psychological. They remind you that you're still capable of change, still capable of feeling good again. And yet, even with all this progress, there's one final piece most men never think about. It's not about what you do with your hands or how often, it's about something deeper, something emotional, something spiritual, and it might be the most important piece of all. 6. This isn't about shame, it's about wisdom. One of the most heartbreaking things I've seen in my career is how many older men carry quiet shame around something that should never be a source of guilt: touching their own body. Some stop altogether, thinking they're too old, too tired, or too broken. Others keep going, but in secret, rushing through the act like it's something to be hidden, something to be endured rather than enjoyed. And far too many feel like they've lost the ability to feel anything meaningful at all. But let me say this clearly, from one human being to another, your body still matters. Your pleasure still matters. And your connection to yourself, especially in this season of life, is more important now than ever. This isn't about being young again. It's about being present, about letting go of old habits that no longer serve you and embracing a new kind of strength. One rooted in patience, presence, and a deeper understanding of what your body needs now. When you approach self-pleasure with intention, not to escape, but to reconnect, you stop treating it like a mechanical task and start honoring it as something sacred. You move out of performance and into presence, out of routine and into relationship with yourself. That shift, subtle as it may be, is powerful. Because when you remove shame, you make room for awareness. When you stop hiding, you start healing. And when you stop pushing your body and start listening to it, everything begins to change. How you sleep, how you feel, even how you walk through the world. I've seen men rediscover confidence they thought was gone for good. I've seen marriages quietly reignite simply because one man dared to treat himself with more care. I've seen lonely hearts find peace, not by chasing something outside themselves, but by finally coming home to their own body with dignity and grace. And the truth is, this kind of change doesn't come from willpower. It comes from wisdom, from learning, adjusting, and honoring the stage of life you're in. Now, if you've made it this far, you might be wondering, what do I do next? How do I take everything I've just learned and actually apply it? Day by day, night by night, until my sleep, my strength, and my self-respect return? Let's bring it all together. 7. Let's bring it all together. If you've stayed with me this far, I want to speak to you not just as a doctor, but as someone who deeply respects the road you've walked. You've carried responsibilities, endured stress, navigated loss, and kept going through decades of change. And somewhere along the way, no one ever told you how to care for your body as it ages, especially when it comes to something as personal and as sacred as pleasure. What we've explored here is not about blame. It's about understanding. One small habit, something as simple as how and where you touch yourself, can have ripple effects you never imagined. It can irritate your prostate, confuse your bladder, tighten your pelvic floor, and leave you waking up at night wondering what's wrong. But now you know the truth. You know that sitting while masturbating, rushing the act, using too much pressure, or going through the motions without connection can all lead to the very things you've been trying to fix. And you know that the solution doesn't come from pills or procedures. It comes from presence, softness, and a willingness to shift. You've learned that slowing down can actually rewire your body. That gentleness builds strength. That touch, when done with care, can restore sleep, flow, and even joy. And that there's no shame in reclaiming that for yourself, only wisdom. You are not too old to change. You are not too late to feel again. You are not broken. You're simply being invited to listen a little closer to what your body has been trying to tell you all along. Start tonight. Small, gentle, a little differently than you used to. And watch what happens.